Hello and welcome, I'm Stormo, and I thought we'd take a look at a new game that's not long come out on Steam called Space Moth DX. I got a code for this, so I figure if I'm getting codes for games I should have a look at them, which is exactly what we're doing here. It is, as you can possibly tell from the shape of the playfield there, this is a vertical shooter. So we're going to get straight into having a look at the game, and yeah, I'll do all that. Okay, so the obvious thing to talk about with Space Moth DX is just how much like Mushihime Summer it looks. It seems to borrow a lot from that game. It has a few interesting mechanics of its own. As I accidentally, wow, having a bit of a rough time here. The old Xbox 360 D-pad is not conducive to shooters, by the way. It can be very hard to get the accuracy you need to move where you want to go. Anyway, so as I was saying, there's a couple of interesting mechanics that this game brings to the table. As I die, great. I was doing okay until then. But talking and trying to concentrate on a bullet hell shooter at the same time is not easy. Oh, there we go. That's not good. Okay, I'm trying to show off a particular mechanic that I'm completely failing. So, okay, so the obvious thing is that this game looks, well, like it was at least inspired by Mushihime Summer. It involves insects and bullet hell, and I've died again. Not doing myself any favours in terms of showing off my... Oh, wow. Anyway, yeah, it involves insects and bullet hell shooting, and it's very clearly inspired by, not just cave shooters, but Mushihime Summer in particular. Has a couple of interesting mechanics, which I'll hopefully get to. Oh, no, we died. We died. Okay, let's let's clear that countdown, and we'll get back, and we'll try and do a little bit better this time. That was really bad. So, anyway, also I had to remember what buttons I was using. I actually got a high score somehow. I haven't put a lot of time into this game yet. I played it for about half an hour. Thereabouts, so... But anyway, where were we? Okay, so, what I wanted to look at was... New game. And we'll try and do a bit better this time. One interesting thing with this game, actually, is it doesn't really have continues. It has a checkpoint-based continue system, which is an odd feature. Anyway, I'll talk about the main mechanic this game has for scoring, which you can probably see in action. You'll notice these larger insects turn black as I deal more damage to them. And there's a noise that plays too there. That one just did it. When that happens, you shoot them with the laser and you get a bonus score. Now, one issue I've had with this is that I've discovered that 90% of the time, it seems like it's a lot easier to just... It's a lot easier to just shoot the enemy with the laser like that and not worry about getting the bonus score. In fact, that's one of the big things I have with this game in general is the scoring system seems very simplistic. It doesn't... There's no combo counter or there's no item collection mechanic or anything like that. It's just all based on getting bonus points for this, what the game calls a soul drain mechanic. And the problem with the soul drain mechanic is that it's a risk-reward system in a very sort of simple way, I suppose, which is that in order to get the soul drain, you need to leave the enemy on the field for long enough to damage it. But it's often easier, but because the bonuses you get aren't particularly big, it's like 100, 200, I think 400 points for some enemies, maybe more for some later enemies, but the bonuses aren't particularly huge, and I've found it's actually just not really worth the trouble of clearing it out. There we go, we did that nice and easily. That went really well, actually. You actually see, even my hitbox is that sort of yellow bit in the middle there. Anyway, yeah, there's a boss bonus for destroying the boss with 2 seconds or less left on the timer as well, which I'm not aiming for. But yeah, so the soul drain mechanic is a really cool mechanic, but it's sort of a risk-reward system in the sense that you need to leave the enemy on the screen for longer, which means the enemy will shoot more, and obviously that'll make the game more difficult. But the reward just isn't worth it a lot of the time. So I've found personally it's just easier to just blow the enemy up and not bother with it. And use the laser. The laser is actually a second button in this game. It's not a hold down of the fire button like it generally is in cave shooters. The bullet patterns are very much straight from cave games too. A lot of them, they feel a lot slower, a lot simpler than what you might get from a cave game. And you can very much tell this is inspired by Mushi Hime-sama because it's using the same font that Mushi Hime-sama uses for its bonuses in a lot of ways. Whoa, that went down. Oh well. Overall though, I don't know about this game, to be honest. I would say that it's well put together in the sense that the people making it clearly understand cave games. They've clearly played a lot of Mushi Hime-sama in particular. And they clearly like those games, and they've clearly decided that what they want to do is make their own version of them. The game even simulates the aura around the ship that you get in a cave game when you use the laser. The laser is much more like... I'll actually just do a load player state here so we can keep going. That's a continuous system, by the way, and you basically sacrifice your score. You don't get to put a high score in, which again is very cave-esque. They usually do that if you use continue. But unlike a cave game, you actually have to start back at the beginning of the stage. So that's nifty. But yeah, overall though, I feel like this game is made by people who are fans of cave games, but who perhaps don't quite understand a lot of the subtleties of those games, or haven't figured out how to best implement a lot of the more subtle features of those games. One of the really obvious things is the visual fidelity is not quite there. I mean, that's fine. I mean, if this is made by people who don't have the artistic skill of, the professionals that work at cave, then yeah, that's fine. But what I've felt with that though is that a lot of these enemy animations are very simple. In fact, a lot of them don't even animate. And one of my big bugbears with the visuals actually is the explosions, which are these very simple sort of just red splats. Now, if you look at, say, Mushi Hime-sama and the explosions that game has, and they are these very well animated fireballs, and there's debris flying everywhere and all this kind of stuff, whereas this game doesn't have any of that. In fact, this game doesn't even really have the sort of multi-layered backgrounds. And in fact, you can see on this level where that would come in too. The game actually shows that off. I'm going to go back to start because there's a few more features I want to show. The game actually shows that off, these the fact that it's using these multiple layers by having the insects come across from under a sort of grass layer. One thing I should point out, actually, there's options to play as different characters. There's two modes, DX mode and arcade mode. Haven't quite figured out the difference between them. We'll try a game in arcade mode this time. But I haven't fully worked out what the actual difference between the two modes is. And there are bonus items to collect. I just got one then. Messed that up. But yeah, as you can see, the explosions are very simple, sort of red blood splats. I think they could be a bit more... I think at the least they could be a bit more dynamic. But yeah, and there is, you can see actually there's multiple background layers on this level with the scrolling. I forgot to do the soul drain. I'm trying to do the soul drain thing here. So... see if we can get that. But you can see the bonuses for doing it aren't huge, and the scoring system itself doesn't result in getting high scores. I think my highest score that I've managed is around 50,000 points, so it's not a high scoring game in that regard. You're not going to get like billions of points in like the first level like you will with a more recent cave game, for sure. Maybe not Mushi Hime-sama, but oh jeez. Just talking and trying to concentrate on bullet hell games at the same time is not the easiest thing in the world. One thing I will give this game though, it has really nice music. I do like the soundtrack, although I do feel the soundtrack doesn't quite match the on-screen action. Like it's a bit laid back compared to what's actually happening. That's it. It's not bad. I find it enjoyable to listen to. But overall, I think that this game feels like there's a bit more to go with it. Would be the best way to say it. I think that the developers have their hearts in the right place. They clearly liked Mushi Hime-sama. But I think ultimately they're not really giving me a reason to choose their game. Maybe not in terms of over Mushi Hime-sama, but certainly as an occasional alternative to Mushi Hime-sama. I don't feel like I would play this game. Pardon me. I would play this game instead of Mushihime Summer. And I'm going to just keep comparing this game to Mushihime Summer because it is clear that is clearly what the developers were inspired by. It's not a rip-off. I'll be honest with that. Like, this game is its own thing. They've taken the themes and the designs, and they've made their own original idea out of it. They've clearly been inspired by those titles, and that's fine. That's great. But the problem is that because they've adhered fairly closely to a lot of the ideas in Mushihime Summer, the game can't help but draw those comparisons, and unfortunately for this game, it does not stand up favourably at all. Like I said, I think my biggest bugbear really is the simplistic scoring system. The way these bonuses work, like there's no reward for chaining or comboing, and honestly, I don't even feel like there's much of a reward for even trying the soul drain mechanic. So I'm not bothering that much with it. Like, maybe it gets bigger and better later on, but there's no indication of that in these early levels. I haven't actually made it past the second stage boss yet. I'm still trying to do that. I'm not even bothering. That's, you can actually see there, that's an example of what I mean about the soul drain system not being worth the risk. You've got to leave the enemy on the screen for long enough to get it to turn black, and then you've got to shoot it with the laser to get the soul drain to happen. But most of the time, it's just easy to blow the enemy up and keep going because you're more likely to survive, and you're only going to get a couple of 100 points. If there was like a multiplier or something in play, then maybe it would be a little bit better. But as far as I can tell, there's no multiplier or anything acting upon those bonuses. It's just a straight, couple of 100-point score bonus. And I'm sure it adds up over time, but I don't feel that it's worth the cost. It's worth the risk I'm taking by leaving the enemy alive for long enough to pull it off. Maybe on this one here that's buried under there, I'll do it and get that small bonus, but it just doesn't seem. And there's no end of level bonus either. Like the end of level shows you how many of those enemy types, the drainable enemies you damaged, but it doesn't provide a bonus for doing that, as far as I can tell. Or at least if it does, it doesn't show that there's a bonus on the end of level score screen. Oh, that was not what I was trying to do. I'm trying to make the second stage boss, but and I mean, I'm not going to say this game's easy. It isn't easy. Like, the bullet patterns are slower than a lot of cave bullet patterns, but they're also very similar to a lot of cave bullet patterns. So if you know caves shooters, then you'll be ready to handle basically everything that this game's throwing at you. Like, it's throwing something very cave at me right now. It's actually a okay, well that's interesting. There are shootable strawberry heads here that you can soul drain without really risking it, and that kind of makes it worth it to do it on those things. I messed it up there. That was me messing it up. That wasn't me deliberately trying to do that. But that is interesting that it's got that. So I'm going to blow these up and not the enemies that are here. Oops, that probably cost me a big bonus. Well, I haven't seen a bonus above 400 yet, actually. So let's see what the bonus is. It's just 400. Okay, well that's oh, I missed the bonus there too. Oh well, we got to the second stage boss, and there's a dinosaur. Okay, there are little bonus items. Whoa, this looks scary. Oh, this looks very Mushihime Summer Stage 3 boss. I think I'm gonna have to find a way to squeeze it through there, and I feel like I'm gonna have to pick one of these sort of places to sit. I might sit further away because I don't like those two sparks that are happening there. Okay. How are we going to make those? Let's see if we can close. Whoa! Let's see if we can't. Oh, no, we didn't make it. Oh well. Yeah, so anyway, that's the first two stages. Over and done with, and yeah, it's alright. It's pretty fun. There is a practice mode. There's high scores. Be warned, this menu is a little bit funny, especially when you go to the controls, because the moment you press a button here, it actually starts assigning controls. There's no controls menu beyond that, so just be aware of that when you're playing. There is another page which has volumes, screen mode. Interestingly, this game has a bunch of screen modes. Actually, it's got a full screen mode that you can see there. It's got windows and various other things like that. That's not actually what I was looking for. It has options for scan lines if scan lines are a thing you like to have in these kind of games, you can crank it right up if you really want. Yeah, no, we're good. Has rotation options, so you have 90 degrees, 180, 270, and normal. So yeah, it's got like the full set. If you want to do like Tartare or that kind of stuff, you can do all that. Next page is timer and speed. I turned these on, but I'm not sure they show anywhere. Actually, I had them turn on. And there's a bunch of different options with the borders. So you can have just a plain black border. You can have, this is the default border here, this really cool sort of artwork. And then there's this border here, which gives you all the instructions on how to get all the items. And yeah, it talks about the scoring system and the continue system. It does mention a 500-point bonus there, I'm noticing. So that's interesting. But yeah, that's basically all there is to the scoring system, and I'm not sure that's enough to keep me interested in the game. There is a graze system as well. You get for grazing bullets, basically allowing bullets to pass over the invulnerable areas of your sprites, and various other things. So it's got all those options. It's fairly standard stuff. I like that it has the rotation options for people who prefer to play these games rotated. That's really nice. I also like that option actually doesn't rotate the controls while you're selecting them too, like some of them can, which can be really confusing when you're trying to set that option. But yeah, overall, I think this game is, well, it's passable. I'll certainly say that. Like, well, I'll go back in and have another crack, but it's definitely a game that I think it's decently made. Like, the developers know what they're doing clearly. It's a fun game, but like I say, it just feels a bit simple. There's not a lot of depth or complexity. Like, you compare this to another cave-inspired indie-developed shooter from a couple of years ago, Jamestown. That game had a lot going on, and it was a really satisfying game to play. And I think perhaps that's the best way to explain it. This game doesn't feel satisfying to play. I don't get a lot of enjoyment. Well, I enjoy it. Like, it satisfies that part of my brain that is the part of my brain that deals in shooters, but it doesn't satisfy the scoring mechanics, the collecting things, the making stuff blow up, all that kind of stuff. Overall, the experience just isn't a very satisfying experience, and I feel like in trying to be as inspired by Mushi Hime-sama as it's possible to be, and still be your own thing, they've perhaps gone a little bit too close to their inspiration in this case. I think maybe a few more original ideas could have been put in. The soul drain mechanic is really interesting, but I don't think it's played with well enough. Like, those static mushrooms in the not mushrooms, toadstools in the second stage are kind of a cool way to use it, but there's no chain bonus or anything like that. Like, you just get a flat bonus, and I think having a chain or a multiplier on the soul drain mechanic would make it more worthwhile to me as a player. Certainly. There's also no bonus, I'm noticing now, for shooting. You don't get, like, in cave games, if you're lasering something, you usually get 10 points per so many seconds for shooting it, and that doesn't happen in this game. I'm not even going to try for the 2-second bonus. You get double boss points if you kill it with 2 seconds or less left on the timer. But yeah, and it doesn't feel... I think that down there might actually be the speed count that I was talking about before. But yeah, overall, it just doesn't feel like a particularly satisfying game to play. Like, I'm having fun, sure, and I can see this is good. I've certainly played far, far worse shooters than this. In fact, the Steam is riddled with terrible vertical shooters, and this is certainly not a terrible vertical shooter. But on the other hand, I don't think it's doing a lot to stand out from the crowd. I mean, its insect theme's nice, the visuals look great, but in terms of being a game to play, it isn't as fun as I think it could be. And, you know, I mean, the developers have tried their hardest, and I could see if you're sort of bored of Mushi Hime-sama and you're just looking for something to give you a quick sort of side experience from that game, then yeah, maybe you could have a look at this. But if you don't own Mushi Hime-sama or this, there's no reason you would pick this over that, definitely. And again, I'm making comparisons to, and it may not seem particularly fair, but it's the comparison this game wants to draw, because this game is doing everything that game does in a lot of ways. Well, not everything, but it's certainly doing everything to suggest that its developers have played a lot of that game and wanted to make their own spin on it. And they've done a good job in representing that, I think. But the overall result just isn't as satisfying or as fun as Mushihima Summer. And yeah, and I'm sort of just rambling on a little bit here because I didn't expect to get this far. I was sort of like, oh, I'll just have another quick go and like die in the first stage, but no, I'm doing better. And you can actually see, since I stopped trying to do the soul drain stuff, I'm actually getting much further into the game. Like, without having to focus on that, I'm actually surviving more. So, in a way, using the soul drain is actually hindering my progress. And a good scoring system shouldn't do that. If you look at, well, Mushihima Sama is a good example of this, but if you look at the Dodonpachi games as well, various other cave games, in general, the safest way through a level is also the way that gives you the best score. And surviving through a level in those games is all about finding that chaining path, or that scoring path, and doing it. And in fact, Mushihima Sama, unlike this game, which I've now finished, Mushihima Sama actually rewards you for destroying enemies very quickly. There are parts of the game where leaving an enemy alive for longer will give you more points, but for the most part, you want to get them killed quickly because of the counter mechanic in that game that reduces your overall scoring bonus that you get from destroying an enemy, and this game doesn't do that. So anyway, that's Space Moth DX. It's a fun game. Would I recommend you play it? Probably only if you're really looking for something to satisfy your shooting needs and you're somehow bored of Mushihima Sama or one of the other really good. I mean, Death Smiles is coming up on Steam pretty soon as well, and I maybe just wait for that. If you're looking for another cave shooter or anything like that. As a game inspired by cave shooters, this is the second best one I've played on Steam. Oh, cool. It has a demo mode that shows one of the other levels that I haven't actually managed to get to yet, but still. The bullet patterns, as you can see, are very cave, even down to the colours and all that kind of stuff. Oh, it's not a very well-played demo. Anyway, but yeah, overall, I'm not sure I would recommend this game to anyone who doesn't already own Mushihima Sama or isn't a big fan of bullet hell shooters on Steam. If you just want to collect every bullet hell shooter on Steam, then yeah, you'll buy this game. But otherwise, I think, yeah, you could probably skip this. It pains me to say that, because I do like the visuals and the art, but there isn't a lot to really satisfy me in this game over something like those other games I've talked about. But yeah, overall, Space Moth DX, that's what it is. So thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next time.